we need to make note of today. But first things first, we need to talk about the 4.0 earthquake that struck directly in the middle of the silent zone off the coast of Oregon. Now, guys, let's just go open up this earthquake and take a look at the magnitude information that the USGS is making available on it. So, first of all, we are right in the middle of the silent zone that we talked about last night. And we're talking about an earthquake striking this spot, and it's been quiet for weeks on end. That being said, what size earthquake is it? Well, obviously, it's not a 3.3. USGS working in threes on this mid-range 4 to 5.0 earthquake. So here's a 4.6 on the list. We got 5s on the list. We've got mid-range 4s, upper 4s, mid-range 5s on the list, which we always throw out the upper and we always throw out the lower, and we then go with our averages in between. And USGS doing that half magnitude downgrade thing that I always tell you guys they do, and I've proved to you over and over again that they do. And here we are, half magnitude downgrade on almost a 5.0 right off the coast of Oregon in the middle of the silent zone. So is that all it's going to be? I don't think so, guys. The fact that it struck, of all the places it could have struck anywhere, right? I mean, if earthquakes were random, first of all, it wouldn't have struck as expected on that day at all today. But, or technically last night going into today, because overseas it's already the 5th, so I have to say today in quotes. Okay, so anyways, 4.2 striking off the coast, 4.7 more like it, almost 5.0, and that's a result of the earthquake up to the north. This is the result of the earthquake up to the north. So, what's going on with the slow slip event? We definitely need to check in on that, see if there's any tremors going on today. And let's look over the last 24 hours. Oh, well, look at what we have going on here. We have a return of clusters of earthquakes up to the north, all across Washington State and North Oregon. South Oregon, down near Medford now, south of Grants Pass, being struck, and the swarm at Redding completely stopping. Look what's going on here, guys. Since last night, a transfer back to the north. Look 48 hours ago. Down by Grants Pass. Now they're getting storms down there. Right now, there's some major storms like hail and damaging winds and some tornadic rotation detected over this area, but it has nothing to do with the earthquakes that are going on there. But today, again, the tremors. These are all small tremors. They're just microquakes. A sign that the slow slip event is not only, transferring to the north into Oregon, but look what's happening. Tomorrow, we're going to have to wait and see. Man, if this returns back to the Seattle area, I think even my biggest critic, Professor John Vidali, might raise his big eyebrows a little bit at that, because guess what, guys? It's noteworthy. It's significant. If this transfers back to the north, it means that it slow slipped, then it stopped, then it went down to the south in California, slow slipped for a week, then stopped, then went into Oregon, now, slow slipping now, and going back up into Washington. And this doesn't even take into account the other earthquakes that struck today, because we have an earthquake swarm back in Washington. Not a tremor swarm, an earthquake swarm topping out at 2.6 in the Puget Sound, back where this whole mess began 8 weeks ago. So go back 2 months, okay? We get back to like February, maybe even, even before that, but, late February, we have the slow slip starting up in the northwest at this location in Washington, in the Puget Sound, west of Seattle. Now it returns with an earthquake swarm, and 4s are now mixing in. That's something else. Over the past week, take a look at what's happened. 4s, 3s, all work their way in on this slow slip that's going on across the region. So it's kind of, it's what we would expect after a 6.0 strikes up in Alaska. Let's take a look at that. There's the 6.0 that struck up in Alaska a few days ago. Is anybody shocked that we're now seeing 4s develop out in the middle of our silent zones going down the west coast? But it's not the result of the slow slip. The slow slip earthquake should be bigger. It should be much bigger. As a matter of fact, this would be 1,000 times less power than what the slow slip is capable of releasing in the 7.0 range. So a 4 is 1,000 times less power than a 7. And that's a rule that holds true in all earthquakes. If you're 3 magnitudes off, that's a power difference of 1,000. We're 1,000 less than where we would need to be for that big one to hit. And the big one would be in the 7 range because the slow slip is a big, long event. It is something that's been going on for 8 weeks, and it consists of, now at this point, I would say thousands of small tremors, microquakes. Okay? So all that's going on the West Coast. Let's take a quick look. Also pay attention to the West Coast of the United States if we're going to be paying attention to locations. That this 4.2 that's currently striking at the exact point we talked about, off the coast of Oregon, halfway point on the fracture zone of the Juan de Fuca. I'd like to pull this up and show it to you on a different chart, or let's go look it up on the on Google Earth. Let's go look it up on the old Google Earth. What do we got going on here? Kickham-Jenny is an active yellow street volcano antipode of the Kickham-Jenny, yeah, over in the Kickham-Jenny, isn't that in the Caribbean? Okay, let's take a look at where this earthquake struck here, guys. We are right on the fracture zone, and I mean right there. Now, we talked about this for how many days? 4 or 5 days. This fracture zone goes right on land, and look where it goes into. Medford and Grants Pass. And the north part of California that was struck near Wairika. So the fracture zone is the spot that's moving, and the reason it's moving, it was the central fulcrum point between both greater areas. Again, both areas spanned from Northern California all the way up to Vancouver Island. So find the halfway point between Northern California here and Vancouver Island here. And the halfway point just so happens to be exactly where our 4.7 to 5.0 earthquake struck. Now, they say 4.2, whatever. It's also next to some undersea volcanic buttes. Wait, you don't see this. Dang it. Okay, take a look at the screen. Here we go. Here is our fracture zone that I was just talking about. It's the Juan de Fuca. It comes onto land and goes into Medford, Oregon. Okay, Medford and Grants Pass. So there's Grants Pass, there's Medford. Here's Northern California, where the swarm started at Redding, went up to Wairika at Etna, California. Yes, Etna, California, next to Mount Shasta. That being said, look, guys, the slow slip event, the middle of the slow slip event was just hit by a mid-range to upper 4. If that's not a sign to you that there is a dramatic influx of pressure going on, when we go weeks and weeks and it's actually been months, I think. It's actually been over a month since we've seen any activity of any noteworthy size above 4, mid-range 4, off the coast of Oregon. So to get it down to a few days' time, I'm really proud of myself to even do that. But this earthquake is a result of the 6 to the north. Okay, so this 5 is a result of the 6 to the north. And there's something bigger most likely coming, because this earthquake, the 4.2 that we're talking about off the coast of Oregon, is just a part of the slow slip that's been happening for the last 8 weeks. And it's accompanied by thousands of small tremors and microquakes that add up cumulatively over time. Then your volcanoes are moving, and I didn't even talk about them tonight, which would be another 20 or 30 minutes we could spend showing you all the volcanoes that were hit on the West Coast. If you live on the West Coast, you might not know that you have warning signs that show up before there's movement that strikes off the coast. I talked about them last night, and today they've played out. There's our mid-range to upper 4 to 5.0 earthquake, whatever you want to call it. They're off the coast. The reason it hit, we gave you the warnings yesterday. Your volcanoes, see, what happens is when pressure's coming up, the first thing it hits coming up through the plates are these ancient magma chambers buried and nestled deep down into the plate. They're weak spots naturally that Mother Nature has pushed up and fractured up through the crust. Then the pressure, and it causes microquakes at each one of those ancient volcanoes. As the pressure then comes up even further towards the surface, it then hits pumping operations, geothermal oil and gas, where humans have drilled down into the crust by several thousand feet instead of Mother Nature pushing up from underneath. Humans have drilled down from the surface down to underneath. And the pressure finds those weak spots in the drill points in the crust and release at those spots. So those were hit yesterday. We talked about the pumping operations around LA, Santa Monica. We talked a few days ago about San Joaquin Valley. And then your geothermal pumping operations are here down in Southern California around Salton Sea and up at Geysers, California in Northern California. So where the other two large swarms are, those are geothermal pumping ops. So what are the other locations being hit? I can name them for you. I've shown them so many times. Bittner Butte and Blowout Mountain up to the north at the north tip of Nevada at California's border. Let me show it to you. A picture speaks 1,000 words. USGS has it 70 kilometers east of Lakeview, Oregon, whatever. It's in Nevada. They're doing uranium exploration here. Now, I don't know if that's what's causing the earthquakes. I don't think so. But we'll zoom in on this and show it to you. Here's Bittner Butte. Okay, Bittner Butte right here. Lava flow flowing off the sides. There it is. And then over to the east, here's another lava flow here, obviously standing out. And those lava flows are ancient. They're weathered over time. But you guys are welcome to come in and download the place marks and inspect yourself. But here's Blowout Mountain, which is a past blast caldera, ancient. Still has some old, chunky, viscous lava flows exposed here on the side of the caldera blast out spot, but it's hit by a swarm of earthquakes. As we go down to the south, we have Pyramid Lake geyser fields. And Pyramid Lake geyser fields, most people don't even know about it, but let's just show you. And if you hear a dog barking, that's my next door neighbor's dog. Sorry, guys. We love dogs. I'm a cat person, though. Got 4 cats. Okay, here we go. So we're on Pyramid Lake, and I've shown this spot many times. It's not marked as a geyser field. So how do I know there's geysers there? Well, if you turn on photos on Google Earth, you'll see people have visited here. And then they've taken pictures of the active geysers that are there at the field. Excuse me if I'm wheezing a little bit, guys. Got the allergies kicking again today. It's just been a bad day all around. I told you guys. I got a lot of problems today. So anyways, going further down to the south or over to the west, let's go over to the west into California. See these? So we got a 2.3 and a 1.0. Okay. And it says 13 kilometers southeast of Willows, California. What I'm intending to prove to you here is that these are all either pumping operations or volcanoes. And so far, I've already just shown you a couple, but we really need to show you that I'm not exaggerating. So here we are. We're here in Northern California, and what you'll see is, see these little specks in the farm fields? Now, this should bother anybody who's into farming or if you're into eating the foods that are processed there. This isn't for pumping water, guys. This is an oil and gas extraction operation that's mixed in with the farm fields. So the farmers sell off portions of here. They've got pipelines, oil and gas going throughout here. It doesn't just stop there, though. That's just one portion of it. It goes on down to the south, and you see this? First of all, most people don't know about the volcano in North Sacramento Valley called West and South Butte volcanoes, but you zoom in on the volcanoes, and they're fracking the volcanoes. So here we go, fracking the volcanoes, here, 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 and it goes all the way down to the south there as well, mixed in with the fields as well. So struck by a swarm there. Then going down to the south, we have Clear Lake Volcano and Geyser Peak Volcano. And I've shown that so many times in the past, but let's just show it one more time. Here's Clear Lake Volcano, and it's marked by the Smithsonian. And on the side of Clear Lake is Geyser Peak, where they've drilled into the, again, in the upper reaches of the volcano and are pumping off steam. So there we go. Steam is going to those turbines and turning those generators. Okay, and then ultimately we go down to the south and we get down through the Long Valley Caldera and Mono Lake Supervolcano. So Mono Lake is moving, Long Valley Caldera is moving, and it brings us into Southern California, back down to Salton Sea Volcanic Buttes. So I don't have to show those locations to you other than just in a quick passing. That Long Valley caldera is littered with volcanoes. It starts at Mono Lake here, goes down to Mammoth Mountain, and then goes down the valley and dead ends in, see how many there are? Look at all those. And then we get down to the south and we get into the Coso Volcanic Field and Volcano Peak. Volcano Peak is an old red and black cinder. Look at the lava flows on that. I mean, you can imagine when that erupted, it had to be incredible. And it'll happen again. Look how many times it's happened in the past. I mean, each one of these is a different crater. So each one has erupted in the past at some point. So it'll happen again. I'm not saying it's going to happen now, but it's happened when there's been tremendous pressure coming in from the west-northwest. So now you got your mid-range 4. There's your mid-range 4 to 5.0 type earthquake, guys. What does this mean for people downstream? If you live in Southern California, in the next 48 hours, there's going to be a new 4.0 earthquake striking down near San Diego and Salton Sea, where the swarm currently is in Southern California. Secondly, there's going to be a new swarm of earthquakes that breaks out over across southern Colorado going into Oklahoma, more like Oklahoma into Colorado. Right, let me put that back to back. Oklahoma, then going into Colorado. And it should strike within the next 2 days to 3 days for both sets of earthquakes. The Oklahoma activity, the Colorado activity, should be about a half magnitude less than what strikes in Southern California. So if it's going to be a 4 in Southern California, it'll be another 3.5 striking back in Oklahoma and Colorado. So we have to watch. Why are we watching Colorado? Well, Colorado was already hit multiple times this week. Also already hit by multiple 3.0 earthquakes. So let's get those back on the feed here just so you can see those, and this will wrap up the update for tonight. For my U.S. viewers, we're about to go into a time where we haven't been in many years, which is a time of great activity, a time where we haven't seen much, and then we're going from that to 4s and maybe 5s, 6s, and maybe even 7s. I hope I'm wrong on the magnitude for the West Coast. The slow slip event is carrying on. That's my report to you for tonight for the West Coast. The slow slip event is carrying on, and now it's littered with larger earthquakes. We went from tremors to zeros, right? Tremors, zeros and ones, to 1s and 2s. Then we went from 1s and 2s to 2s and 3s. Now we're at 2s and 3s, and we're going into 4s. So I don't need to tell you that that means there's a power increase happening. And the power increase, taking it from 1s to 4s, like I said at the start of this update tonight, a 3 magnitude increase or decrease is an increase or a decrease by 1,000. So in this case, it's 1,000 times more activity striking overall in this slow slip event, but it's 1,000 times less than the 7.0 earthquake that we were looking for to strike so far. So it's a 4.2. They downgraded it by a half magnitude. It's more like a 4.7 to 5. And that's 2 full magnitudes, almost 3 full magnitudes, less than what the big one can be capable of coming on this. Time frame on the big one. We are at 4 days out to where I said we're going to cancel the warning or we're going to reassess. So we have 4 days. 4 days from now brings us to the 8th, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, Monday the 8th was the date that we said we would reassess on. And as it stands right now, you've got larger earthquakes striking in this area, and that's not a good sign. But it's expected. We were expecting this to happen because of the 6 up to your north. Look at the arrow. Look at the arrow, okay? Do you see the arrow? Here, let me get the arrow on the screen. See the red arrow here coming out of Alaska and pointing down towards California? Now look at the big earthquake that just struck up there. Okay? So the big earthquake that just struck up there put pressure down to the south. And it's going to keep doing that. Every time there's new pressure that comes in, it's going to transfer down the coast and strike at one of our sticking points. And the sticking points are the silent zones, and the center of the silent zone was hit as expected. This holds true around the entire planet. The silent zones, the central points, the fulcrum points of the silent zones are the spots that are usually hit next, and it's usually a combination of the earthquakes on either side or all sides of that silent zone. If there's no earthquakes there, you have to check your volcanic eruption feed because the volcanic eruptions relieve pressure in certain areas. So if there's a big blast, for instance, right here at Manam Volcano,